Hi everyone, thanks for joining the webinar. Let's give some of the participants a little bit more time to tune in, and then we'll start in a couple of minutes. All right, dear participants, well, good morning to those of you who are on the other side of the world. Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Ling, and I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing at I4E. So first of all, welcome to the Innovation for Electrification Showcase webinar. It's organized by I4E, and we created this showcase series to bring our members one step closer to potential collaborators. And this is really the platform to give our members the opportunity to directly showcase their products and solutions. So with that, I'm happy to kick off the final edition of the 2024 I4E webinar series on DRE impact on SDGs. You might have noticed that the topic is part of a wider campaign that we launched in December. This morning, we launched a newsletter on the same theme, so be sure to check out the contributions there as well. So if we can maybe move on to the agenda. So this is the agenda for today. So yeah, indeed. So for those of you tuning in, we at I4E, we are the Business Association for Decentralized Renewable Energy, or DRE. And for us, it is not only a technological solution, but it is also a transformative force to achieve Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And so whether that's climate action or job creation or trying to advance gender equality, education, healthcare, DRE provides a clean, smart, and inclusive pathway to sustainable development. And it's no secret, today we still have 685 million people that lack access to electricity. At I4E, we're committed to the achievement of SDG 7. Some of you are familiar with that. And SDG 7 stands for Universal Access to Clean, Reliable Energy. We also believe that DRE is the most effective solution to meet this challenge. It delivers energy where traditional grids can't go. It empowers communities, and it's a driving force for sustainable economic growth. So with that, I'm happy to share with you on-the-ground examples of DRE impact on SDGs from our members. We have 6 members joining us here today, so I'm very eager to hear from all of you. So we'll be hearing from Atmosfair, who'll be talking about their Rural Electrification program in Madagascar. We'll also be hearing from EMPO-NI. So they work on PV solar direct cooking. We'll be hearing from IITA, and they'll be talking about how gasification brings decarbonization, agrobotics, and women engineers to agricultural value chains. We'll also be hearing from Phaesun, a long-term member. They have a solar-powered self-chilled cold room in Kenya that we'll be hearing about, followed by Smart Villages. They'll be talking about their smart agri-centers in Uganda. And last but not least, we'll be hearing from Zimpertec, and they'll be talking about their plug-and-play solar home systems. Some housekeeping rules. So please note that the session will be recorded. The recording will be made available on the I4E website. If you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat with the name of the speaker it's addressed to. So if you can move on to the next slide. So yeah, this is basically a slide to sort of introduce us. For those of you who don't know us, we are the Alliance for Rural Electrification, or I4E. We're a global business association representing 200 members along the distributed renewable energy value chain. We work on expanding sustainable electricity access, creating jobs, and responding to climate change in Africa, Asia Pacific, and Latin America. And yes, and so this is the global map, and the green dots are where you can see where our members are active in. So as mentioned, our members are active on the 3 continents, so Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Our members are also technology agnostic, so they work on different renewable energy types, whether that's bioenergy, hydro, wind, power components, energy storage, or solar PV. And they also work on different system types, whether that's standalone, mini grid, or grid connected. Can move on to the next slide. And that's the last slide to sort of conclude the opening remarks from me today. As mentioned, we're a business association. We offer 4 major service lines, which you can see summarized here. They are business and market development, capacity building, policy and advocacy, and communications and marketing. Now, if you're interested in learning more about our services or joining ARE, feel free to reach out to us after the webinar. We also have a Black Friday exclusive deal for those who want to join, and it's until the 16th of December. So if you're interested, as I mentioned, please reach out to my colleague Carlos. And I think with that, we can transition to Carlos, who is my colleague who will be facilitating the rest of the webinar. I wish everyone an insightful webinar, and hand it over to you, Carlos.
Thank you very much, Ling. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining from all over the world. And welcome to this new edition of the Innovation for Electrification Showcase webinar. Today on the topic, DRE impact on SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So my name is Carlos Ferrer. I'm Business Development Assistant at ARE. And as my colleague Ling has already introduced you to the background of this webinar and also to the background of ARE as an association, now we can move directly to the presentations of our speakers, who are the experts on this topic. But before that, I would like to stress on the fact that, dear speakers, you will have up to 8 minutes for doing your presentations. So please stick to the time. And also, dear audience, please pay attention to the presentations of our speakers and make use of the Q&A function of GoToWebinar. Please make sure you name the name of the speaker you're asking the question to, so I can redirect those questions during the Q&A session at the end of the presentations. Having said that, Nele, you will be the first speaker. You are our Senior Project Developer of Atmosphere. So for the next 8 minutes, the floor is all yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Nele from Atmosphere, as you said already. I will talk today about our project in Madagascar, which I just visited, so really fresh experience with me. And yeah, how the project is impacting the SDGs. So really roughly to Atmosphere. So we are one of the largest non-profit provider of offsetting projects in Germany. We are developing our own climate protection projects and are active in over 20 countries. And we are always working closely together with local project developers, of course. So in Madagascar, for example, with Anchor Madagascar, they are the main partner in the project, which I will talk about now. And also Artasis Madagascar is a smaller partner from us in this project. So yeah, so all of our projects are registered as a climate protection project under the gold standard. Previous it was also under CDM, and in the future it will be under 6.4. And the idea is that we are selling the certificate on the market to private persons or companies which are doing voluntary carbon offsetting, and that we are focusing in our projects, of course, to reduce the CO2 emissions, but also having a high impact on the other SDGs. So yeah, to have a good quality project. And also we're advising all our customers and we were also checking it really so that they do first a reduction, like an avoidance, then a reduction, and just compensating the rest emissions so that we don't make any greenwashing. Okay, so now over to the next slide. So our project in Madagascar is one of our biggest rural electrification projects we are having. So up to date, we financed the development of 22 mini-grids, which will electrify over 50 villages. In the future, within the next 4 years, we will participate in another 200 villages, it seems. But this 22 mini-grids are already financed. 3 of them are operational already and 19 are in progress. So how we are supporting it is always that we are giving a low interest loan so that the project developers are able to develop the project and operate the project on a cost level where they can deliver the electricity to really low tariff, so that also the households can really afford it. So this is our aim, why we are involved in this project. And then we are also involved in such a way that we are doing at the beginning a local stakeholder consultation to see that the project which is developed is really in the need of the local population. And we also do an annual check of the project so that we are checking how the SDGs, which we want to target, are really impacted at the end, and work closely with the project partner together if there should be anything which could be improved. Yeah, and as we are so close with the project developers, we are also identified now that it would make sense in our mini grids to support also the e-cooking. So as many households are still using firewood or charcoal for the cooking, and Madagascar, as many areas of the world, have a big problem of deforestation, and yeah, less and less wood is available. And also the households, of course, having health issues and so on, cooking with firewood and charcoal, which has so much smoke. So therefore we had a pilot running with 64 households where we were checking how the households could use e-cooking as a new cooking source. And we also supported them by subsidizing, first of all, the e-cooking equipment, but secondly, also extra subsidizing the electricity tariff so that they can afford it. And the outcome of this 2 projects, so the mini grids and in combination with the e-cooking, I will show now. Next slide. So first of all, we are having an impact on zero hunger, because what we realized is with the e-cooking now, it's a situation that they can cook quicker. It's a safer way of cooking. So even if normally the women are cooking there, so when the women is not at home, also the men are cooking now. Sometimes even the children are able to cook, and so this makes a more stable amount of meals per day. And they also have cooling systems so that the food can stay for longer fresh, and yeah, so they don't have so much waste on food. Next slide. The next impact, which is I think most of the biggest ones, is on the health and well-being. So first of all, also connected to the e-cooking, they really have less smoke. So they realize already that they have less problems with their lungs. And also there's, of course, not the risk of getting burned by the open fire. Then also in our mini grids are many health centers, and we are also electrifying some health centers which are outside of the mini grids. So there you also have an improve, so that now there's some cooling system for the medication. You have light for operations, which was not there before. You have a better diagnostic because you can use technical equipment. So the whole the whole medicine and access to doctors and so on is just really improved, and they are also able to treat more people per day as it's just being faster by using electrical devices, by having light and so on. Next slide. Then the most the easiest one, of course, is the impact on the clean energy. So with our mini grids, we reached around 1,218 households already. And this is just with the 3 mini grids which are already in operation. And next to the households, of course, also the schools and health centers, as I mentioned already. And the demand is so high that we constantly are now also thinking about increasing the mini grids which are established already, because more and more people want to get connected. And by subsidizing the tariff, we are also able to so that the energy can be also made affordable to low-income communities, which is often not the case, because it's with a high capex of renewable energies, you often have the problem that the people need on the market getting market loans which have a high interest rate, and this has a big impact on the tariff. So there we are quite happy that we can avoid this with our low interest loan and make affordable prices. Next slide. Then, of course, within our mini grids, also a lot of job opportunities are created. So around 40 permanent jobs are involved in this in the 3 mini grids, and we're having also a big booster for the local economy. So when we were there, we saw it already that there were carpenters which have big job offers now by and are increasing the workshops. We have kiosks which are established, a woman which is for the first time earning her own money. So there's a big impact. Next slide. Just 2 more impacts. So the next one is on SDG 9. So of course we are having impact on the industry and innovation and infrastructure, because we are building these mini grids. More and more areas are getting connected and are getting access to electricity and energy. Next slide. And then the biggest one, we are saving CO2 emissions, because we are avoiding any diesel, genset. We are avoiding, we are also trying to fight against the deforestation and so on. So there's also a big climate impact. So the 3 mini grids are at the moment reducing around 1,000 ton CO2 per year, which will be, of course, much more when we are having more and more mini grids involved. Thank you. Sorry, I was over the time.
Thank you very much, Nele, for this insightful presentation. It's a great way of starting the webinar, guiding us through this electrification program in Madagascar. I'm pretty sure all the audience will be making their questions about your presentation. So thank you very much. Yeah. Now I have the pleasure to invite our next speaker, who is Marco Honsberg, the CTO of EMPO-NI of Grid Solutions. Hi, Marco. Thank you for being here. And the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Hello, thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, so we would like to present here a scaled PV off-grid solutions for PV solar direct cooking. We avoid batteries. You will see that in this presentation. The next slide, please. So we are located in Düsseldorf here. So that's the very west of Germany, but we have an international footprint also for sourcing, and we have international corporations with lots of companies, universities, and so on. But that's not the main topic today. Next slide, please. So the range of products that you already may know is starting from the PV solar module integrated battery chargers. It's a very robust solution that you find from the rainforest to the Antarctica. We have a full range of solar direct drives. These are driving 3-phase motors in the range from a few hundred watts up to 5.5 kilowatts. We have complete solutions. This one that you see here is a PV solar oil press. We were awarded in 2022 with a Bavarian State Award in gold with that. So it has reached a lot of recognition, and it fosters local businesses. And on the very right side, we have complete drive kits to transform any application that today, for example, using combustion engines to drive mills or grinders or whatever into an application that fully operates on PV solar, all without batteries. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Today, I would like to talk about a new field of activities that we started a bit more than a year ago. It's about solar direct heating. Solar direct heating means we use a PV panel in order to directly use a heater to heat water or food or whatever without using a battery here. Well, the reasons to use such kind of solar direct heater is, of course, these reasons are mentioned here on the slide. Stop deforestation, Nele already mentioned that here, but there's also social security topics, because the way to find the wood is very long and dangerous. Yeah, energy independency is a key factor for us that is driving this, and of course, the upcoming carbon offsets. So these units should have a precise energy counter to have the base for such kind of carbon offsets trading. And of course, it's a complete CO2 neutral cooking, and also the materials that we use are as much as possible minimized. So we use a minimum amount of electronics, plastics, and so on, yeah, to really reduce the CO2 footprint of all our products, not only during the utilization of that. Next slide, please. So it works very simple. So this is the start of the discussion. Is the very simple thing that we have seen already in many places is you have a PV panel that is directly heating a heater resistance, nothing in between them. It works very fine as long as you have sun, but you see on the right side, whenever it comes to some shading or let's say bad conditions for the PV panel, what will happen then? Next slide, please. Yeah, and these questions are pointed here. So the key is how to get the maximum out of the heater, even under bad conditions. Next slide, please. Yeah, we have put this here into a simple chart. So you see two lines, the blue one and the green one. The blue is the very simple direct connection between the PV panel and the heater. That is very nice for very high sun intensities. As you see a little bit at the 1000 watt per square meter, you see that you get the maximum out of the heater. But whenever you have a less sun intensity, you see that the blue line falls a lot below the green one, which represents the theoretical maximum that you can reach if you do proper control, maximum power point tracking, and also load matching algorithms. This is exactly what EMPO-NI has been working on the past years. And so what you see here is a fundamental result that, for example, if you have just like 40% of the maximum sun intensity, like 400 watts, yeah, you gain more than the double, yeah, of what you would get with the simple direct connection between a PV panel and the heater. So we have developed this kind of optimizing circuit that always extract the maximum and adjust this to deliver it to the heater resistance. Next slide, please. Well, out of that, we have developed certain products here for different use cases. For example, it's a very small one that works with one PV panel. It's a 500 watt solutions. We had a lot of fun to use this, and we have already field tests running with this in Togo, yeah, with excellent results because it's very robust, it's very simple, and it is an absolute rugged device, even under harsh environmental condition. It does not use any battery. Yeah, that means you see in the left corner here, you see you connect that to the panel with the PV connectors. It's a MC4 connection, and there's a simple control box. It's a prototype that you see here, yeah, and we have used the heat plate here to do that. That means you can use any pot here. Of course, preferably you use thermally isolated pots here, and you can do the cooking during the day. The next slide, please. The slightly bigger brother here, that's for 2 panels. It's like, let's say it's up to 800 watts. Yeah. On the right side, you see the same photo here, but indeed where the arrow is, the heat plate is a 22 centimeter heat plate, so it is bigger here, and it is it's 800 watt solution, although it's 500 watt written there. We use the same solution here in order to heat also boilers, so water preparation to prepare hot water and to use hot water as a storage. Yeah, instead of using batteries, yeah, that have the environmental bad impact that we all know here. So that is the 800 watts solution that we developed here for this market. And last but not least, next slide, please. This is the one that we are actually working here, because the very positive results and feedback that we have received from the field, and especially in the African areas, we also got a request here: give us more power. We want more power for some professional use. That's, I'm talking about schools, workshops, or some public places. So there we are actually preparing here the solution for more professional cooking, like 50 liters, 75 liters, 100 liters. And below that, you find in orange the approximate time that it takes from, let's say, 25 degrees to bring it to cooking. Of course, the cooking process itself for the food that you have inside starts before 100 degrees. But that's just giving you an imagination here. 50 liters, 75 liters is a typical sizes of pot that is recommendable for such kind of solution. But we have more requests here. Since there's no battery in the system, yeah, to save the cost for that, people would like to take a little bit of the PV solar energy in order to charge mobile phones, lamps, radios, PCs, and all this kind of thing. That goes very well with powerful USB connections, which means all these devices have already built-in batteries. No need to transform this kind of heating and cooking solution into a huge battery storage, because you would really need a lot of battery here to make it work reliably over many years. Next slide, please, and that will be the final one. This is just to see everything at a glance and some estimation of how many people you could feed with this size of pots. Here, the smallest solution is for a typical large family, let's say around 7 people maximum. So you cook with this simple solution for 7 people within, let's say, 90 minutes or 120 minutes. Please consider there's no more time necessary to search for firewood or any other things. For let's say a head count up to 12, maybe it's the bigger solution for 800 watts, and the professional solution goes, let's say, in the range of 50 people and more, depending on the pot you will place. So that's a professional solution. The prototype will run in Tanzania here with our friends there, and well, I hope in one of the next presentations I have a chance to give you some more insights on the very first results. Yeah, so it's that's the way we see this. We see this market oriented on cost and efficiency here, and avoiding complete batteries by replacing batteries, chemical storage by storage of hot water, for example. The next slide, please. That's the contact address in case of you have any questions, or if you want to have a direct contact to us to talk about the technology and things. And of course, if you like to place order, please feel free. Thank you so much for your attention. And yeah, Carlos, sorry, I've exceeded a minute and a half, but appreciate very much your patience.
Thank you very much, Marco, for this really interesting presentation. Also really well linked with the Sustainable Development Goals, all these technologies that you are manufacturing and designing from Germany to the world. So thank you very much. Now I have the pleasure to invite our next speaker, who is Aarti, who represents the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, where she's the consultant business and policy. So hello, Aarti, it's great to have you here. And now, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So today I'm going to talk about how biomass gasification can remove and reduce greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture, but also introduce automation and new high-value jobs on the back of a state-of-the-art power and heat system, and make those jobs attractive to women. And all of this will be in a closed-loop model that Co-Regen advises on. And in the background, you can see how heat is typically produced today in a Kenyan tea factory. So men throw those half-meter billets of wood into a boiler, and I'm going to focus on tea for the rest of this presentation. Next slide, please. So the drivers for change will vary depending on where you are in the supply chain. So on the left-hand side, Kenya has over 112 factories, and processing tea is power and heat intensive, but the grid is unreliable and expensive, and fuel wood is not easily available or sufficiently dry. And at the same time, farmers and estates are battling with degraded soils and a changing climate. But on the right-hand side, 95% of Kenya's tea is exported. So sustainability drivers of blenders and retailers, especially in the global north, will also matter. Next slide. So if we take a whistle-stop tour of the last 100 years in Kenya, trees were first uprooted to make way for tea. And now a new generation in some parts of the country is actually uprooting the bushes to put in buildings. And all of this has impacted and continues to affect the environment and climate. At the same time, there are external factors, including how much blenders, retailers, and ultimately consumers will pay for tea, though overproduction has been pushing prices down. And there's also the cost of fertilizer and the greenhouse gas emissions in its manufacture, transport, and use. And between the farm and the cup, you can see the factory, and that's where the fuel wood is incinerated, and that's where considerable amounts of power are consumed. Next slide, please. So we're proposing gasification on a build, own, operate, and transfer basis, and the factory may choose to on-pass some of the savings to the farmers and or reinvest in the business. And the biomass for the gasifier will come from the tea prunings that you can see on the left-hand side and other agricultural residues. This will partially reduce the fuel wood for the boilers. The biochar will improve fertilizer efficiency, reducing denitrification. And then automating biomass supply and biochar application should attract young people into farming, tackling another one of the persistence of challenges in agriculture in Kenya and indeed across Africa. The average age of a tea farmer can be 65 in some parts of the country. So tea factories are already quite self-sufficient as they run 24/7 during peak production. So what we've recommended that the government enables upskilling of factory workers, but also incentivizes women to plug the leaky women in energy pipeline. And they should also incentivize gasification as a technology in order for it to attract investment. Next slide, please. So what is this gasification? It's low oxygen thermal conversion, and it converts the feedstock that you can see on the left into sustainable power and heat and biochar on the right. And a typical downdraft gasifier is visible on the top. But we've opted for Compact Syngas Solutions Next Generation Gasifier because it has a simplified modular system which has been designed to be easy to operate with dry gas scrubbing to minimize wastewater. And you can see again on the left, there's a conveyor belt for the feedstock, which is much lighter than throwing wood into a boiler, and it is control panel driven. So we do believe it's going to be attractive to women in energy. Next slide. For a tea factory operating 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, and for most of the year round, the gasifier will need just over 3,700 tons of high carbon biomass. Out of that, it'll produce hot water. Alternatively, the syngas can be directed to the boiler, and it's a saving on the boiler in both cases. Combined heat and power engine also converts the cleaned, cooled syngas to about 480 kilowatt power per hour, and that will be more reliable than the grid. And the 560 tons of industrial biochar a year will be eligible for carbon credits. And we expect all of this to be at lower cost and emissions, notably because they'll be saving on power and because of the fertilizer efficiency. So you can see how it contributes to the targets of the likes of Marks and Spencer, right? They want to reduce total scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, will be replacing the grid and diesel generators and reducing the boiler heat, and the application of biochar will optimize or reduce fertilizer use depending on what the farmer wants to do vis-a-vis their yield. UK blenders and retailers also have an increased focus on regenerative agriculture and climate resilience, and they want to enable farmers to reduce impact through low carbon or responsible foods. So again, we'll be enhancing the soil through the biochar, we'll be reducing pressure on the land through a higher or more stable yield and better fertilizer efficiency, but also critically improving natural resources management, because tea and eucalyptus are, at the end of the day, 2 monoculture crops. So by increasing their tea leaf yield and then biomass gasification will enable tea producers to transition away from both monoculture tea and eucalyptus. They'll be able to plant native species or horticulture crops, aromatics, etc. And importantly, again, the upcycled tea prunings will be one of the alternative sources of biomass. Finally, the jobs, SDG 8 and 5, gasification and agrobotics for women and youth who really do not want to be farming in the same way anymore. And this is again in line with the likes of Marks and Spencer. They have actually a small accelerator fund to support innovation in their supply chain. Next slide. So a little bit on the skills. We did conduct a masterclass in 2023. So you can see some screenshots on the left. We have a correct curriculum ready with an ambition to reach 50% women in technician, operations, fabrication and after sales service roles. And you can see on the right hand side the current gender mix of a tea company, and we know we have some work to do. Next slide. So in terms of next steps, the first thing is to bring in a gasification unit into Kenya so that it'll be built, installed, commissioned on the ground in Kenya, and all the training and operations will start to happen. We'll be able to prove that the supply chain works, including the delivered cost of biomass at the foot of the gasifier, and we'll have a chain of custody. We'll test the biochar, and we'll invite everyone in the supply chain or in the ecosystem to come and take a look. The second thing is to customize and deploy the first robot. What that will do is 2 things. It'll prune and chip the tea bushes in order to meet the gasifier specification. The second thing is it'll apply biochar in the furrow and cover it with soil and shredded prunings. And it will be controlled with somebody that will have driver skills. And finally, running more comprehensive biochar trials with the Kenya and China tea research institutes for all sorts of reasons, including not just yield of the green leaf, but also cup quality, the soil, how the impact of biochar on other diseases or on diseases, because in the changing climate, diseases and pests are an increasing menace. And of course, the whole greenhouse gas emissions piece, which I've already sort of spoken about. And then, yes, we will be impacting prunings policy, which I'll be happy to talk about should anyone want to know more. So next slide, please. So just to say thank you very much, and if you'd like to reach out to us, please do so via email or on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Aarti. Thank you so much for this presentation. Really good solutions on SDGs 8. And really looking forward to know more about this. I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of attendees who wants to be more aware of all these technologies. So thank you very much for that. Now we will move to the next speaker, who is Mr. Florian Martini, who is Research and Innovation Engineering Engineer at Phaesun. Good afternoon, Florian. Welcome to the webinar. Now you will have the floor for the next 8 minutes. So thank you very much.
Yeah, hi, Carlos. Thank you very much. So today for this presentation, I picked out 2 solar-powered cold rooms that we installed in Kenya. Next slide, please. First of all, a quick overview of who we are actually and what we are doing. So Phaesun is a wholesaler and system integrator for PV off-grid system with our office based in South Germany. And yeah, we have about 40 employees. Our focus is on the rural electrification in the markets in Latin America, the Middle East, and especially in Africa, where yeah, we are mostly active. A couple of years ago, we registered the trademark Self-Chill together with a startup company. And yeah, now we are selling solar cooling solutions under this brand. And yeah, so this is our brand for sustainable cooling solutions. We also do technology development and field testing, and also sometimes with renowned partners from the academia and the industry. Our unique selling point is that with our systems, our customers are able to follow a very modular approach and also very easy to scale. Next slide, please. Yeah, this slide shows a quick overview of the technology that is behind the self-chill approach. So the PV panels provide the electrical energy to our thermal energy storage that we call a water chiller, which is basically an insulated basin filled with water. And inside the water, there's the self-chill cooling units converting the electrical energy into thermal energy, so cooling down the water to about 1 or 2 degrees, and even producing ice when there's enough solar power available. And then during the night or during cloudy days, we can use or make use of the ice that is melted to keep the water temperature at about 1 degree. After that, a DC pump circulates the cold water to the actual consumer, which could be, for example, a cold room using a water-air heat exchanger, or a double-walled milk tank, to cool down the milk inside the tank. Next slide, please. Yes, so for the presentation today, I picked out 2 cold rooms. This is the first one that we installed about a year ago with our local partner Vetu, which is a Kenyan social enterprise. On the very left, you see the technical room with the water chiller, and just next to it, then the cold chamber where the fruits and vegetables are cooled. Next slide, please. Yeah, for our cold rooms, we try to maximize the use of local materials. So we only import the key components from Germany and the cold cell, so the sandwich panels to build a cold cell, and all construction materials, we source them locally and thereby lower the logistics and import costs, and also maximizing the local value creation. The business with this cold room is running for about 6-7 months now, and it's increasing. However, we still see challenges with running financially sustainable with a cooling as a service model. So what we do is that Vetu acts as the operator for the cold room, renting out the crates for the market vendors. So they pay per crate and day to store their fruits and vegetables inside the cold room. So now we are planning to expand our business and build a second business case so that the operator would also act as an aggregator, buying the produce directly from farmers, storing it inside the cold room, and then reselling it to the market vendors, but also to local restaurants and hotels. Next slide, please. The second cold room has recently been installed in Homa Bay, which is also next to Lake Victoria, and also just next to the marketplace there. This has been a joint development project in collaboration with different universities, research institutions, and also our local partner Vetu. And the goal of this cold room has been to develop a cold room that has the lowest carbon footprint possible. Next slide. So it has recently been installed and is running now. And what we realized with this cold room is We are using straw instead of PU foam as an insulation material. We are using eco boards that are made out of recycled materials instead of metal and plastic for the interior and exterior walls of the cold room. For all our self-cooling systems, we are using natural refrigerants instead of conventional alternatives. So with our cooling units, we have a global warming potential of 3 compared to more than 1,000 that are used by conventional cooling systems. And we were able to maximize the local manufacturing instead of imports. As on the right side, you see the manufacturing process of a wall element. You see it's pretty simple, using a wooden frame and just putting straw inside, covering it with eco boards. And this is how we set up the cold room. Next slide. Yeah, here you can see how we were able to lower the carbon emissions. Let's go through them. First one is the batteries. So by using our thermal energy storage, we're able to reduce the use of batteries drastically. Second one is the refrigerants, which I just mentioned. And the third and biggest one are the blowing agents. So for producing a PU foam sandwich panels, it's not about the PU foam itself, but the manufacturing process, the blowing agents that are needed to build such a PU foam panel. They have a very, very high carbon emissions. As you can see, it's more than 3 tons for a cold room of about 20 cubic meters. So by using natural materials instead of the PU foam, we were able to reduce the carbon emissions drastically. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a scheme of this low carbon cold room in a side view. And we also made use of passive cooling methods. So the air that is entering the technical room comes from the opposite side of the cold room, is flowing below the cold room, so in between the floor and the earth, and is thereby already be pre-cooled by the earth. Then the air flows through a mesh with wet carbon, making use of evaporative passive cooling. And with these measures, we are able to reduce the temperature inside the technical room by about 10 degrees compared to ambient temperature, which makes the whole system much more efficient without the need of any additional energy for pre-cooling. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So feel free to ask any questions or to contact us directly if you have any questions or any interest in our cooling systems. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian. Impeccable timing, just 8 minutes. Thank you very much for the presentation, really appreciate it. Encouraging again all the audience to make use of the question and answer function of GoToWebinar in order to address questions to Florian and also to the rest of the speakers. So now we will move to the next speaker, who is Zoe Slattery, Engineering Project Manager at Smart Villages. Hello, Zoe. Nice to have you Hello. Here today. And the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking to all of you today. My name is Zoe Slattery, and I'm an Engineering Project Manager at Smart Villages. And today I'm going to be speaking on the topic less is not more, i.e. on the topic of implementing development projects which focus on multiple sustainable development goals. Now, if you're joining this webinar today, you're likely someone who, like us at Smart Villages, wants to see renewable energy access transforming lives in communities. But I also suspect that many of you have heard of or experienced the frustration personally of seeing energy projects fall short of their full potential for impact. So today I will share some of our experiences in working on projects which are designed from the start to target multiple sustainable development goals. Using a real-life case study of smart agri-centers in Uganda, I will demonstrate some of the challenges in using an integrated approach and, most importantly, why it matters. Next slide. So before we dive deeper, let me clarify what I mean by an integrated approach. Because when we talk about targeting multiple SDGs, we're recognizing that development challenges do not exist in isolation. communities will never identify energy access as their only need, because they typically face multiple interconnected challenges, such as agricultural productivity, as market access, gender equality, education, and yes, energy access. But an integrated approach recognizes these interconnections and asks, how can improvements in one area catalyze improvements in others? So how can energy access improve agricultural productivity? How can agricultural development make energy services more affordable? How can women's empowerment strengthen the sustainability of energy initiatives? Next slide, please. So in this presentation, I want to share two observations. First, designing and implementing projects that target multiple SDGs simultaneously is very challenging, and there are several reasons for this. First, the sector often measures success with simpler measurements, like number of connections, rather than capturing complex interconnected impacts. Second, the funding itself for development projects is typically siloed to specific development goals, such as energy or agriculture, and it typically favors short-term projects. Thirdly, both large development organizations and governments tend to operate in disconnected departments which don't have good communication structures. Next slide, please. So my second observation is that despite all of those challenges, this integrated approach is actually crucial for creating meaningful, lasting impact. So one of the reasons is communities do face interconnected challenges that require integrated solutions, which means that if projects have a very narrow single focus, those are the projects that often fail to achieve sustainable impact. And we as project developers miss crucial opportunities. In addition, when we integrate different development areas, we can achieve multiple benefits with the same investment. Next slide, please. So these observations aren't just academic, they have real implications for how we design and implement projects in the real world. And one such project that I'm going to introduce here are smart agri-centers. So these are solar-powered community hubs, which we as Smart Villages with our partners have developed in Uganda. And they provide a combination of energy access, infrastructure, productive use services and training in order to increase agricultural profits. So I'm going to go through each of the three challenges that I've mentioned earlier and explain how they impacted this particular project. Next slide, please. So as I said previously, it's often the case that projects focus on a few simple success metrics. Now in our case, this could have been something like number of connections, but instead, when we started this project, before even thinking about construction, we started by doing a comprehensive baseline survey to understand as much as we could about the lives of people living in the area, including level of education, their diets, their views on women's role in society, basically anything that we thought could be changed by having access to a smart agri-centre. And by repeating an updated version of that survey after 2 years, we saw impact in a very wide variety of SDGs. So we saw people reporting increased financial literacy, we saw a nearly quadruple increase in farmers' profits, we saw changes in health outcomes, environmental practices, and future mindset, and much more. But I want to emphasize that's a difficult thing to do, because these kinds of surveys are difficult to design, they're difficult to implement, and it's difficult to tie impact specifically to a single intervention. Next slide, please. So the second challenge of a multi-SDG approach is, as I've said, funding structures are siloed. So our initial funding was from Energy Catalyst UK, which is a funding instrument designed for renewable energy innovation. And they do operate an excellent program, but one of the challenges for us was that our initial project was for 2 years. And if you want to see long-term impact, this funding structure makes it difficult. So we had to seek additional funding to do further impact studies in later years. Otherwise, we couldn't have captured some of the more important development, which takes time to become apparent. Next slide, please. And the final challenge is often organizations operate in disconnected departments. So when we discussed this project with the Ministry of Energy or the Ministry of Agriculture, it was very difficult to involve them because they each had their own targets and their own budgets. Next slide, please. So what can we do about this? Well, as implementing organizations, we need to transform how we measure impact if we want to effectively capture and impact multiple SDGs. So we need integrated measurement frameworks that track interconnected impacts. We need to track long-term systemic change. We need to build in regular participatory reflection points in a project where communities get to define what success looks like. And we need multi-stakeholder evaluation teams that bring together different perspectives to capture impacts across various sectors. Now, these changes require more work from us as implementing organisations, but if we want funders and we want governments to support integrated approaches, we are the ones that need to demonstrate why measuring multiple impacts matters. Next slide, please. We also need fundamental changes in how development work is funded. So we need more unified funds that explicitly support integrated development approaches rather than splitting funding by sector. We need funding which is longer term, for instance, with the majority awarded at the beginning of a project for initial implementation and a small amount of funding saved and spread out over multiple following years to support impact evaluation. We need funders to reward honest reporting of challenges. So that means offering potentially additional pivot funding when a project shares difficulties that they're having openly and allows them to be honest and change their scope as necessary when difficulties arise. And we need learning events where organisations can safely share challenges without fear of losing funding. That's a difficult thing to do unless organisations are certain that it will not impact their ability to get future funding. These challenges require action primarily from funding bodies, but it's up to all of us to advocate for that transformation if we want to achieve genuine multi-SDG impact. Next slide, please. We also need to break down organisational silos. So we need shared budgets between departments for integrated projects. We need permanent cross-ministry working groups where different ministries or different parts of an organisation can regularly coordinate the development efforts. We need to have some high-level champions who have the authority to work across different departments and drive these integrated approaches. And we need joint planning and evaluation processes where departments have to work together throughout the lifetime of the project. Next slide, please. So, in this presentation, I have briefly discussed 3 of the key challenges that are preventing us as implementing organisations from achieving genuine multi-SDG impact in development. I've explained why this is important, and I've given practical solutions to each of those challenges. And I hope it's clear that the stakes are high here. If we want to achieve meaningful, lasting development, we need to transform the way that we work. Now, at Smart Villages, we are putting these principles into practice. We also offer consulting services to help organisations design and implement integrated approaches. And I'll be happy to discuss more after this call with anyone who wants to hear more. But for now, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you very much. I'm sure I'm not the only one who have find this information about the smart agri-centers really interesting and all the challenges surrounding them. So yeah, thank you very much. And now we have come to the last presentation of the day. So may I have the pleasure to invite our last speaker, Mr. Ulrich Zimmerman, COO of Zimpertec. Hi, Ulrich, last but not least, and please, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Carlos. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, we do.
All right, great. All right, so now I'm taking the last spot today. It's great to be here, and it's a very nice topic that we talk about what can actually be done from energy for the SDGs. At Zimpertec, we are basically a company working on solar home systems, on a very broad range from small systems up to big systems in DC range up to AC range. Because we really believe that with electricity, we can foster a lot of benefits to rural people across the world. And we are already there since 13 years now, and we can really see what impact electrification makes to people in rural areas. And everything we do is completely plug and play, so to really enable rural people to use the systems and also later on to minimize any kind of after sales efforts. Next slide, please. So why is energy so important there? Because from my perspective, or from our perspective, the energy is very often the baseline for enabling more applications. Because, for example, if I have energy, I'm able to make clean water. If I have energy, I'm able to have a health center electrified. I'm able to, for example, have a refrigerator to secure more food. And all those applications are basically able to be done by energy. And what's for us really important when we look at that is usually holistic approaches, because very often people only say like, this is energy and this is the application. And this often doesn't really work in a practical application. Normally, you need to look at both things at the same time because, and that's very simple, you need to know how much energy you actually need for running the appliance in a suitable manner, right? And often, let's say, the appliance data is not as accurate as maybe the solar data is. Yeah? So therefore, it's very important to really, if you look at such a project, look at it holistically, have good partners around it. Yeah, so we, for example, partner with appliance manufacturers, yeah, to combine shipments, even to really make sure that the appliance comes together with the solar home system so that everything works. And with the plug and play, you can really reduce any kind of risk significantly, yeah? Because if it's plug and play, you just bring it, the installation will not take long, and you're ready to go. Next slide, please. So what does the solar home system make so interesting for the application? Yeah, so this is one picture from Uganda, for example, which is actually from my cousin. And I think it explains really how the reality looks like in rural areas a lot of times. Yeah, for sure, not the bigger cities or rural cities, let's put it that way. But most of the times, basically, you have very widespread houses, which are difficult to reach. And therefore, with the solar home systems, you can just go by application, which enables quick electrification and offers a lot of possibilities for the people even in rural areas. Yeah, so if I have a health center, I have a system. If I have a farm, I have a system. If it's a school, I have a system. And this way, you can really do very quickly the electrification. Next slide, please. And this is possible because basically we have this very big product portfolio, from very small systems to big systems, yeah, from few lights and phone charging up to TV kits, refrigeration kits, even plug and play AC solar home systems, or even bigger AC solar home systems which can work as an UPS system. We talked a lot about batteries today, just to make one thing very distinct. Yeah, so what we do, we really only work with lithium iron phosphate batteries because of less environmental concerns. The durability is much higher compared to most other battery technologies, and therefore they're just much more and better to use. Also from our experience, so we are now there since 13 years, and we had like 1 or 2 years ago, I think, the first project where we replaced the battery cells. Yeah, so there is a lot of possibilities. Well, the longevity of such batteries is definitely a big benefit with lithium iron phosphate as a baseline, which is different to lithium ion or other lithium technologies. Yeah, so lithium iron phosphate really makes a big difference. Next slide, please. So in general, because there's often a debate about like small systems, like the very entry-level system, the tier 1 system of solar home systems, how much impact does it make? And therefore, I was looking at the new tool from the World Bank, from SMAP, which is basically an AI solution which can retrieve data and out of several reports. And I just asked it like, hey, what's the impact? And you can really see that there is very big impact even with small systems, because you improve the life. In this case, they say like 94% of the users have improved quality of life, which is very big. Then even if you look at the economic data, you can see that despite it's a small system, even people still have an increased economic perspective, because simply you charge phones for your neighbor, you use the system to run your shop. You're maybe a teacher and you need to have light to do something in the nighttime. So there's many applications which can be even done with small systems. And even the CO2 emissions can be also drastically reduced. So there's a link to the SMAP. Feel free to use it later. I think it's really interesting, focusing on off-grid areas and how many people still need to be electrified in all across Africa, and even in other countries, I think, partially in Latin America as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, quality education. Education is definitely a big factor, which is very difficult to do without electricity, because without TVs, without light, it's often hard to do the education. We have a setup where we say like, well, maybe you need a very small system just for the teacher to charge his phone, to retrieve data, to have some lights. That can be done with a very entry-level system. Then we have with a bigger system, a possibility, for example, with media to improve the education, or even with laptop charging, yeah, so that you can really access digital content. And then in the even bigger one, it's a plug-and-play AC system, so that you can really, if you have an off-grid or mid-sized school, basically you can, yeah, just use that system and you can install it within a few hours, and you're ready to go. And we can see on the right side a lot of these examples, like in Uganda, Malawi, Sierra Leone, Tanzania, yeah, where those systems are used, because there is simply no risk, yeah, or close to no risk, I would say, for the NGO. If they want to operate a school, yeah, then with such type of system, you know it will work because it's ready to go. Yeah, so there is no risk in terms of the installation part. Next slide, please. Food conservation, yeah. So definitely one big factor all across it. Improves the health, it improves food loss, it improves the economic situation of people, and therefore that's a very big factor. Next slide, please. Yeah, water is also possible to be cleaned by electrolysis. That's also one application. Next slide. Health stations can also be quickly electrified, also definitely a very big benefit. Next slide. Yeah, so that's basically it. I think that the big benefit again with solar home systems is the speed and the reliability, how we can electrify such SDGs. If you have any questions, just let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions, and if you want to reach out later, please go ahead. There is the email address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ulrich, for this final, really insightful and interesting presentation. Thank you very much for it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is the turn of the Q&A round. So may I invite all the speakers to turn on your cameras so we can move to this Q&A session. And also, dear audience, this is your last opportunity to make use of the question and answer feature of GoToWebinar. So please make sure you take this chance of asking your questions. Yes, please name the speaker you're asking the question to, so I can redirect the question afterwards. So if please we can move to the next slide. Great. I will try to follow the same order, not necessarily, but if possible. So we'll start with you, Nele, with the first questions. The first says, do you find your clients interested in the impact areas categorized by SDGs, like zero hunger, or is their focus only on carbon? If they are interested, is it reported in the SDG framework categories?
You mean the clients which are buying our certificates, or the project developers?
I think it means the project developers, but if you can address for both of them.
Yeah, I mean, for the project developers, they have naturally, because they are on site, they are really, like, at least the ones we are selecting, they're really well connected with the local population. And so they have their own interest to have a positive impact on the social community, like on the local community, and having also from their own interest, of course, an interest that there is a increase in productive use, so that they have like a impact on the economic also communities, so that it's getting more and more stable, that it's safe, and so on. But they wouldn't categorize it so much with the SDGs. So to really getting in contact with the local stakeholders and categorizing it and then making indicators on it, this is really coming through us So they would measure it, I guess, more on the financial side and how stable the community is. And we are looking really more on the, we also have like some soft indicators, for example. So one really nice example was when it was about the e-cooking that the people said like there's much more love. So the husbands are loving the women more, the women loving the husbands more, because now they are studying cooking as well, and it's much more love in the community. So which is nice things which we are figuring out by our consultancies then as well. And from the companies which are buying the certificates, they're for sure. I mean, they really want to have certificates where, of course, the CO2 emission reduction is transparent and it's really well and pessimistic calculated. So this is, of course, one major concern of them, but they also want to tell a story and they want to get connected to the project, and therefore the SDGs and to have clear indicators is really important, so that they have something in the hand they can get connected with and they can imagine.
Thank you very much, Nele. I think it's really well answered. Now moving to you, Marco, we have a question that says, with solutions ranging from 200 watts to 800 watts, how does EMPO-NI ensure scalability for larger communities or institutions, such as schools or health centers, that may require more extensive cooking or heating capacities?
Yeah, the system is very modular, and there's something that I have also forgotten to explain. That there is a local manufacturing of these cooking stoves. And the scalability, of course, locally these cooking stoves are built according to, let's say, certain technical guidelines, and our controllers are fully scalable. So we have a part that is making the control, and then we are adjusting it just to the power needed there. So which means the scalability is given by only modifying one small part of the whole thing. Where the control is a proven control that we have been using already for many years, also in our very first generations of maximum power point tracking battery chargers. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, for me it does, and I'm pretty sure for the audience as well. Thank you very much, Marco.
Thank you.
Now it's the turn of Aarti. The question says, could you please advise on the cost of the gasifier? Additionally, was there any indication of willingness to pay by women tea farmers in Kenya, or will the adoption of gasifier largely depend on the availability of carbon credits? So two questions there.
Okay, so to answer the first question, as I mentioned in the presentation, the off-taker, i.e. the tea factory, would actually sign up for a build, own, operate, transfer type agreement, so a power purchase agreement, and that would include the power and the heat. So they're not actually going to have to spend, as it were, on the gasification unit with the combined heat and power system, etc. So all of that will be taken care of, and then they will sign, as I said, a PPA. Typically in Kenya at the moment, PPAs can be 25 years, but we'll of course explore options with the off-taker. And then in terms of, so there's multiple revenue streams. I think if I sort of were to answer the second question, there is the power. The heat also has a value. Remember, for every kilo of tea being produced today, a tea factory may be using anywhere between 800 grams to 2.3 kilos of fuel wood, right? So if we're going to put a dent in that of about 15% plus, then of course use biomass for the gasifier. It's not just about sort of the revenue streams, there's also some sort of savings that will come out. So yes, so there'll be a value to the power, value to the heat. There'll be the biochar itself, which could then be used to produce a biochar-enriched fertilizer, for example. And then there will be the carbon credits. So it's actually multiple revenue streams.
Thank you, Aarti. Really well answered, really complete. Thank you for that. Now we move to you, Florian. The next question says, the self-chill system converts electrical energy into thermal energy with ice as storage. How does the system perform in maintaining consistent cooling during extended cloudy periods or in regions with, let's say, irregular sunlight?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So this is actually just a design question. Yeah, so we have our water chiller, our thermal energy storage, and depending on the region where you are, of course, you have to design the size of the PV system and also the amount of water that you have as a thermal energy storage, and also the number of the cooling units that you insert inside the water chiller. As I mentioned, we have this modular approach. So a customer would be able to have one water chiller and inserting or starting with only 1 or 2 cooling units inside it, having a certain amount of cooling capacity. And then after a while, if this farmer increases his productivity, he would be able to just add another cooling unit and another one, and thereby increasing linearly the cooling capacity. And of course, if you install the same system in Germany or in Kenya, of course, in Kenya you would need much less PV power compared to Germany. So it's just a design question. Yeah? So for all regions, we have a solution where we can offer, almost 100% autonomy for a specific time span. And yeah, this indicates just the PV size that you would need.
Great, thank you very much, Florian. Zoe, there's also a question for you that says, cold and dry storage is highlighted as a key agricultural service. What specific improvements in farm profits or food security were observed due to this intervention? Thanks.
So we saw quite a lot of different improvements from having access to the Smart Agri Centre. So the Agri Centre itself, it had energy access, obviously, and it had the infrastructure of the building, and it had the productive use equipment inside, and it also had a training element. So we saw impacts of an increase 1 year after commissioning of, on average, 283% in farmers' profits. So that was surveying between 2021 and 2022. And that was the average after looking at 100 different farmers compared to a control community which didn't have a Smart Agri Centre. We saw 30% reduction in farmers' costs because they were able to access through the Smart Agri Centre better quality inputs and cheaper ones as well. We had a lot of anecdotal evidence from different people saying that they had a very different mindset for farming. So before, there was a strong mindset of farming as a subsistence activity, so not something that would necessarily earn them profits. But after having access to the Agri Centre, access to the bulking, the cold storage elements, and the help in achieving different markets, people really saw farming as a proper job that they could earn a lot of money from, and something that they could see themselves doing for a long time and their children doing for their future as well. And all of the other SDG impacts that I mentioned in terms of education and health and a lot of other things. But for those specific farming statistics, that's what we saw.
Thank you, Phil. Now, Ulrich, your turn. A couple of questions to you. One says, what's the lifespan of these solar home systems, and does Zimpertec take care of any responsibility for their disposal at the end of life?
So 2 questions. Yeah. So first of all, it does depend a bit on the system. Yeah. So there is the small systems typically have 2,000 cycles, but then you're still at 80%, right? So then you can still use them, but just with a reduced energy availability. Then the bigger ones go up to 4,000 cycles. So basically, it depends a lot around about like how often you completely deplete the system, and then it would probably vary. Like for the small systems, we say something between 6 to 10 years, while the bigger systems would be 10, 12, or 16 years, even depending on the usage. Then the second point, which I want to stress out really, because that's probably the number one factor right now if we talk about environmental topics. For sure, disposal is part of it, but the major topic right now is repair. Yeah, because a lot of companies actually don't work on repair of systems, and they don't even really allow distributors to do repair, which I think is a bad approach. You know? What we really do is we have an online academy. We train our customers like how you can really repair the systems in nuts and bolts, like even how can you exchange a FAT on the PCBA board, yeah, to really make sure that as much as possible you can regain from that systems. Yeah, like even batteries, like if you have a battery which doesn't work, it doesn't mean like the battery is completely broken. It can be only one cell. Yeah, so you can maybe even remake the packs. So there's a lot of things that can be done before we talk about disposal. Yeah? And then I think the point is that looking at the batteries, there will be an coming disposal market. Yeah, we see that already for PCBAs. Yeah, so that you can actually give PCBAs for disposal, and you even get still some money from that as a distributor. For batteries, I think it's just a matter of time until that will come, because there is no way how a manufacturer can handle that. Yeah? Because you cannot simply send it back to the factory. I mean, if you want to do that, you can do that, but I think it's about to have national recycling approaches to that. Yeah. And I think there's a good paper from ARE actually about recycling and battery topics. Yeah. I can highlight that.
Thank you, Ulrich. You actually received another question, which is also dealing with waste. That says, while this system provides renewable energy, how do you deal with the waste such as parts of or equipment? So maybe it's also linked with this question.
So then the question would be really which kind of waste. Yeah. So basically the point really is the repair. Again, yeah. If you have a solar panel, in 90% of the cases, what breaks is maybe the plug. So if you exchange the plug, it's not much waste. Yeah. So if you look on a PCBA board, it's typically maybe one part which is broken in most of the time. So as long as you work on the repair, there is not really much waste. And then again, for electrical components, there is already in most countries, or in many countries at least, some recycling process. And I think that's really the way to go.
Thank you very much, Ulrich. Now we'll add some questions that we have been receiving. For example, another one for Marco that says, well, what are the cost implications, and what can the system be cost effective in rural Africa, setups like homes and institutions?
Sorry, I have missed the first part of the question.
Yeah, it starts saying, what are the cost implications? I'm not sure if it's addressed on a specific system, but also says, can the systems, you know, be cost effective in rural African setups like homes and institutions?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is actually why we made the system. It was one of the decision points that we had to consider, because is this affordable? Is this an affordable solution? That's the key question. This is why we have taken out the batteries. Sorry to come again to the point of batteries, because batteries are typically in the applications, and water is a much cheaper and environmentally more friendly storage. And we've focused on the local manufacturing of the stoves, of the cooking parts. So these are made with locally available materials, and it's just a few grams of nickel chrome wire that is bought, and the rest is done by local fabrication. That makes this system extremely cheap. I've shown in my presentation the solution using a classical cooking plate or a heat plate. That's not the solution that we see in Africa, but that's something that we can of course provide from here. But it makes sense to just deliver or even locally manufacture. So we are working here with people in Nigeria to make this happen. EMS services are available in these country to bring down the cost for the system. As a matter of fact, we have never had any problem even to provide samples cost-wise. So there was no discussion about that, and that for the moment gives us the confidence that it's a very affordable solution. So very clearly, it must be much below 300 euros for an 800 watt cooking solution, completely including panels, cabling, and so on. That's not a big challenge.
Thank you, Marco. I think it's really clear now. Now for you, Nele, a question that says, how do you deal with extreme rainfall that can lead to damage to solar plants due to erosion and flooding?
You mean like for the mini grids? How? Yeah, we didn't have this case in Madagascar yet. We had some cyclones, so therefore one of the sites was a little bit destroyed, especially the electrical mast. Yeah, this is something which needs to be calculated in as a cost. We have also tested in one grid-connected PV plant a system where the PV can be folded in when a cyclone is coming, so that it's not getting damaged, so that it's enclosed in the containers, which had to be done once in the last 4 years. And of course, this is a good option, but considering the cost compared to how often it is needed at the moment, we decided that for the mini grids and the rural areas, we can go with a fixed installment, and we didn't have big issues yet. So it's rather like also flooding is not an issue in these areas where we are. We rather had an issue now with some fire coming near because of open burning of some local habits which is happening there. But even this was protected well because we have constantly a team on the site, and if something happens, they are there to make all the necessary safety measures, like switching off the system and so on. But we didn't have big issues there, so hopefully it stays like that. But otherwise we would always check if there are some special technology available for flooding. So having building up a system higher and having some special concrete to cover, like to be also safe for erosion. But luckily it was not needed.
Thank you very much, Nele. Well, ladies and gentlemen, finally we arrived at the end of the webinar. There's no time for more. So first of all, I would like to extend our thanks or gratitude to all the speakers here today for their valuable time and efforts preparing all these insightful presentations. I think it's been really interesting to hear all this information, and I'm looking forward to have you in future editions. Also, thank you, dear audience, for your attention and also for asking all these questions. We tried to address all of them, but if some of them are not answered yet, we will share all the questions with the speakers so they can come back to you afterwards. Finally, thank you all the Aarti team for your support in this webinar. If we can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is the invitation for the next edition of the I4E Showcase webinar that will take place on 27 February 2025. So please mark it in your calendars. And for all of you that want to meet us in person, please also mark in your calendars 8 to 10 of April next year, as we will be doing our EIF Energy Access Investment Forum in Kampala, Uganda. So hoping to see a lot of you there in Uganda. Having said that, thank you very much, all of you, for being here today, and happy holidays, and have a good start of the year.